The chandeliers in the Grand Palais kitchen gleamed like frozen fireworks, their light cascading down onto marble counters where knives flashed like silver lightning. The scent of truffle oil and seared foie gras hung thick in the air, a perfume of privilege. Cameras hovered like silent hawks, broadcasting every gleam of caviar and every artful drizzle of sauce to a live audience numbering in the millions. It was the final round of the Culinary Olympus Championship, the most prestigious cooking competition in the world. 3 Michelin-starred chefs, adorned in custom-tailored jackets embroidered with gold thread, moved with deadly precision. Their stations were thrones of opulence, Japanese steel knives, copper pans hammered by hand, truffles worth more than a month's salary resting casually in crystal bowls. And then there was her, Maria Alvarez, 63, in a faded green janitor's uniform and worn-out sneakers, stood quietly in the shadows, clutching a battered stainless steel pan. Her brown hair was pulled into a bun so tight it looked painful. Her hands were calloused, her back slightly hunched from decades of scrubbing other people's messes. The embroidered staff patch on her chest had a thread dangling from it, swinging slightly with each breath she took. A ripple of confused laughter spread through the elite crowd. Who's letting the cleaning staff into the competition? A food. Critics sneered into his live mic, eliciting chuckles across the arena. Did someone lose their lunch lady? A sous chef joked, triggering a roar of privileged laughter. Maria said nothing. She simply walked to the last empty station, a leftover spot originally meant for an absent celebrity chef, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Her utensils were basic, her ingredients humble. A bag of onions, a crusty loaf of bread, a dented tin of homemade broth tucked into her belt. Overhead, the massive LED screen zoomed in on her trembling hands. Comment sections online exploded. Welfare. Contestant. This will be a train wreck. She probably thinks sous vide is a vacuum cleaner. Maria lifted her head, and for a brief moment the cameras caught her eyes. Dark, calm, unbroken. Not a flicker of shame, not a trace of anger. Just an ocean of patience that no amount of ridicule could touch. The head judge, a culinary legend, known for his brutality, leaned into his microphone, voice dripping with sarcasm. Contestant Maria Alvarez, is it? A beat of mocking suspense. Impress us, if you can. The countdown timer flashed to life. 90 minutes. The gunshot start of a kitchen. Timer echoed through the arena. Maria exhaled, slow, steady, and reached for an onion. The crowd barely noticed. They had already moved on to cheer for the glittering favorites. But something began to stir in the air, as soft and slow as a rising wind before a storm. The first slice of Maria's knife against the onion rang out sharp and clean. And the world didn't know it yet. But it had just heard the opening note of a symphony that would tear down its illusions. The knife in Maria's hand moved with a grace that defied the heavy silence around her. A clean slice. Then another. Then another. Each motion fluid, deliberate, the antithesis of the frantic, flashy movements of the Michelin chefs whose pans clattered and flames roared as they worked their high-wire acts of molecular gastronomy. The audience, draped in velvet seats along the gallery, barely spared her a glance. Their attention was glued to the dazzling theatrics, liquid nitrogen plumes, edible gold leaf, spheres that burst like caviar upon the tongue. Maria sliced onions, she diced celery, she peeled carrots with a paring knife so worn it looked more relic than tool. Above her, the giant screen kept flashing her name, Maria Alvarez, Janitor. The subtitle stung like acid. The comment section under the live stream was a wildfire of mockery. What is she making? Prison soup? Someone call security before she mops the stage. I bet her signature dish is instant noodles. One of the contestants, Chef Gabriel Moreau, France's golden boy, lifted his copper pan with a theatrical flourish, tossing lobster medallions through a flaming arc. The crowd gasped and applauded, cameras flashing like lightning. He winked at Maria as he plated the lobster, his voice carrying over the stage mics. Watch and learn, madame. Maybe you can improve the cafeteria at your next job. Laughter crackled through the hall like static electricity. Maria kept her head down, her blade whispering through the vegetables. Not once did she look up. On the far end of the stage, Chef Isabella Leone, Italy's youngest Michelin awardee, rolled fresh pasta through a golden machine. She whispered something to her sous chef, loud enough to be picked up by a roving mic. She probably thinks risotto is Spanish for rice soup. More laughter. Wider now, meaner now. The head judge, Chef Anton Devereux, raised an eyebrow, his silver hair immaculate under the spotlights. He tapped his judging tablet with a sigh, murmuring just loud enough for the closest cameras to catch. This is a waste of a slot. A pity guest. Nothing more. Maria's hands never faltered. Instead, she stirred her chopped ingredients into a battered cast-iron pot she'd carried in from the back, an item that looked laughably out of place among the state-of-the-art French cookware. The live-stream audience frothed. That pot looks like it survived World War II. Is she going to make a soup kitchen special? From her corner, Maria poured a ladle of homemade broth into the pot. The aroma, rich, deep, haunting, began to slither unnoticed into the air, threading through the heavy cloud of truffle oil. And foie gras, one judge and the youngest, a rising star named Claire Dubois, paused, nostrils flaring slightly. But the moment passed. The cameras swung back to Chef Gabriel flambeing peaches with cognac, back to Chef Isabella, stacking towers of microgreens with tweezers. Maria stirred her pot slowly, carefully, the steam rising. Around her like a shroud. Another commentator on the live stream typed, "She looks like a witch brewing sadness." The crowd laughed, the kind of laughter that wounds. Yet within the mist of ridicule and opulence, something ancient stirred. Something heavier, more human than foam and edible flowers. The timer on the wall ticked down, 65 minutes remaining. Maria reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded, crinkled piece of paper, a recipe written in a trembling hand. The camera zoomed in. At the top, almost illegible, it read, "Mama's Healing Soup." The first real shiver of change passed unnoticed over the arena, but it had begun. The aroma from Maria's pot began to seep further into the Grand Palais kitchen, an invisible thread weaving itself between the velvet seats and gold-leafed plates. It was subtle at first, a grandmother's kitchen on a winter evening, a memory of something warm, something safe. It gnawed at the edge of the audience's consciousness like a forgotten lullaby. But spectacle still ruled. Chef Gabriel slammed down a gleaming plate. Roasted venison with black truffle espuma, saffron-scented, just swirling like a golden river. Cameras crowded him, flashes dancing across the stage. "A dish fit for kings," he announced with a bow, his voice soaring over the roar of applause. Chef Isabella followed, a millefeuille of sea bass and artichoke heart, topped with a foam so ethereal it looked like captured mist. The judges murmured approval, their pens scratching against ivory scorecards, and then all eyes turned to Maria. The LED screen above flared with a cruel, blaring graphic. Up next, the janitor's dish. A burst of canned laughter played mockingly through the speakers. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for humiliation. Maria, moving, like a prayer in human form, ladled her soup into simple, white ceramic bowls. No gold rim, no designer garnish, just clear broth cradling tender vegetables, herbs, and shards of bread softened to silk. She placed 3 bowls onto the judging podium. Silence fell, thick and heavy, broken only by the ticking clock. 22 minutes remaining. Judge Anton Devereux approached first. He didn't bother hiding his disdain. He sniffed the bowl, lips curling. "Soup?" he scoffed, loud enough for the cameras. "This is the culinary Olympus, madam. We expect art, not peasant broth." The audience snickered. Even some of the junior chefs covered their mouths, stifling laughter. Maria stood still, hands folded before her apron. Her expression was a mountain, untouched by the storm. The second judge, Claire Dubois, hesitated. Then, almost against her will, she dipped her spoon into the broth. The moment the soup touched her tongue, her eyes widened, almost imperceptibly. then shuddered, as if guarding a secret too precious for the world to see. Judge 3, a grizzled food historian named Masterson Reed, followed. 1 spoonful. He set the spoon down slowly, reverently, as if afraid to break the spell. The cameras zoomed into Anton Devereaux's face as he grudgingly tasted, and then, for the first time in his legendary ruthless career, his words failed him. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. The mocking comments online slowed. Someone in the gallery whispered, "It smells like my grandmother's kitchen." No, it smells like home. The judges sat frozen. Above them, the live stream chat exploded, not with ridicule, but confusion. Wait, what just happened? Why are the judges crying? Taste it, someone else taste it. The host, struggling to maintain the show's pomp, gestured dramatically. To truly test a dish, it must face a blind tasting. We invite the audience. Gasps rippled. It was unheard of. No contestant had ever been subjected to a public tasting in this competition's history. Maria said nothing. She merely nodded. A volunteer was chosen at random, a food blogger known for his scathing reviews, infamous for tearing down restaurants with a single post. He approached Maria's bowl with a smirk. One taste, then another. The smirk dissolved, replaced by something raw and unguarded, tears welled unbidden in his eyes. It tastes like my mother tucking me in after a fever. His voice cracked, carried through the hushed arena. More volunteers surged forward, hands trembling, spoons clinking. Each one found a memory folded into that bowl, a grandfather's laughter, a first love's comfort, a home long lost and suddenly, achingly real again. The judges sat stunned, pens forgotten. On the screens, above, the chat turned into a flood. This isn't food, it's a miracle. She's rewriting what cooking even means. Liu and Maria, the healer, trending. Maria stood silent amid the chaos, her soup steaming softly under the chandelier light. The time on the clock hit 0. Wow. A new era had begun, and it had risen from the battered hands of a janitor the world had laughed at. For a long, shivering moment after the final bell, no one moved. The 3 Michelin-starred chefs stood frozen behind their sculpted plates, towers of edible ambition, while the janitor's humble bowls of soup sent invisible tremors through the arena's gold-veined marble. Judge Anton Devereaux, known across continents as the executioner for his merciless critiques, rose slowly from his seat. His hands, usually as steady as a surgeon's, trembled slightly. He approached the podium, his footsteps echoing across the stunned silence. When he spoke, his voice, once laced with derision, carried the heavy gravity of confession. "In all my years," he began, each word dragging the weight of pride surrendering, "no dish has ever done this." He gestured helplessly at the audience, at the volunteers still weeping quietly into their bowls. "This is not food. This is memory, healing. It is the reason we ever picked up a spoon in the first place." Gasps rippled through the hall. Chef Gabriel Moreau's confident smirk had disintegrated into a ghostly paleness. His plate of venison now looked grotesque, a monument to ego. Chef Isabella Leone clutched her pearl-studded apron, her tower of foam wilting unnoticed under the heat lamps, irrelevant. The youngest judge, Claire Dubois, stood and lifted Maria's battered ladle, high like a relic, and spoke into her microphone. "Today, greatness wore no gold, no stars, only a heart bigger than all our awards combined." The audience rose to their feet, as if pulled upward by something bigger than themselves. A standing ovation, first hesitant, then roaring, deafening, a thunderstorm. Clapping, stomping, weeping, the livestream chat exploded into pure awe. She broke the system. Maria Alvarez forever. I'm crying over soup. How is this possible? Anton Devereaux lifted Maria's weathered hand, the hand that had scrubbed floors no one saw, polished sinks no one thanked her for, and raised it high above their heads. Today, culinary Olympus bows to its true champion. The screens, flashed with a final, irreversible verdict. Winner, Maria Alvarez, new culinary standard. Established confetti cannons fired overhead, gold and silver raining down. But somehow, the confetti looked almost ashamed to land on her faded janitors. Uniform? Maria's eyes shimmered with tears she did not wipe away. She stood still, humble, while the richest, most powerful figures in gastronomy screamed her name, clapped their hands raw. In the gallery, the food blogger who had mocked her so cruelly earlier knelt, holding his bowl like a chalice. In a corner, the CEO of the culinary Olympus, a man who once famously declared that cooking is for the born elite, removed his jeweled cufflinks and dropped them quietly into a trash bin as Maria passed. The chandeliers above seemed to burn brighter now, not in icy arrogance but in reverence, and Maria simply smiled, a small, quiet smile that held no malice, no revenge, only peace. She turned, her sneakers squeaking slightly against the marble floor, and walked calmly off the stage, her battered pan still in her hand, leaving behind a legacy no trophy could ever match, a woman of faded cloth, a pot of soup, and a world forever changed. Weeks passed, but the legend of Maria Alvarez only grew. Clips of her quiet defiance flooded every corner of the internet. No slick PR campaigns, no sponsorship deals, just that small, unwavering woman ladling soup into trembling hands. Maria the Healer. Trended for 37 consecutive days. Newspapers called her the soul of culinary art. TV shows begged for interviews. Publishers fought over book deals. Hollywood offered her a biopic starring Academy Award winners. Maria declined them all. Instead, she took the modest prize money, a sum dwarfed by the sponsorships offered, and opened a small kitchen in a quiet corner of the city. She called it simply home. No reservations, no black cards, no velvet ropes. Everyone was welcome: bankers, janitors, retirees, children who clutched empty lunchboxes, artists who couldn't afford their next brush, tourists lost in a foreign land. The only currency accepted was hunger, of the stomach or of the heart. Each bowl of soup Maria served was a conversation without words, a stitch in the fabric of a torn world. Sometimes she cooked in silence. Sometimes she listened to stories, broken dreams, old regrets, small triumphs nobody else had time for. And always, always her hands moved with the same grace, the same reverence she had shown under the chandeliers of the Grand Palais kitchen. Her battered pot hung above the hearth, framed not by gold, but by hand-carved wood, inscribed with the words, "Strength is quiet. Love is simple. Dignity is undefeated." Visitors came by the thousands from every country, standing patiently in line not for a fleeting thrill, but for something they'd almost forgotten they needed: hope. Even Judge Anton Devereaux came once, hat in hand without cameras or entourage. He sat on a plain wooden bench, slurped his soup with quiet tears slipping down his aristocratic face, and left without a word, his heart lighter by 1,000 burdens. Chef Gabriel Moreau retired from competitive cooking, opening a free culinary school for disadvantaged youth, inspired by the woman he once mocked. Chef Isabella Leone launched a movement for simplicity in cuisine, citing Maria's bowl as her North Star. As for Maria, she never changed. She still wore her faded uniform, still tied her hair in that tight, painful bun, still moved through her tiny kitchen with the quiet dignity of a queen no crown could define. And every evening, as the sun dipped behind the city, skyline golden light would stream through the windows of home, catching the steam rising from the pots, turning it into clouds of molten fire. Passers-by often stopped, looking through the windows at the modest, glowing kitchen. They didn't always know why they paused, only that in that place, somehow, the world felt a little less broken, and somewhere deep inside them, where all the forgotten songs of their childhood slept, they remembered. Strength wasn't about stars on a jacket. Love wasn't about grand declarations. Victory wasn't about applause. Sometimes all it took was one woman, one battered pot, and one perfect bowl of soup. Hey, if this story stayed with you, even just a little, I'd be so happy to share more moments like this with you. Just subscribe and turn on the bell so, whenever a new story is born, you'll be one of the first to feel it. Thank you for being here. It means more than you know.